Welcome back to English at Work. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Alex. This is episode 5 of our Interview Mastery series.
We've spent 4 episodes talking about how to answer questions. Today, we're flipping the script.
That's right. Today is all about the questions you ask the interviewer. And this is so important. Your questions are just as critical as your answers.
A lot of people think the interview is over once the interviewer finishes asking questions, but that's when the real evaluation often happens.
Exactly. The questions you ask reveal how you think, whether you've done your research, and if you're genuinely interested in the role.
Bad questions can cost you the job, but great questions can actually seal the deal.
By the end of this episode, you'll know what questions to ask, when to ask them, and which questions to absolutely avoid.
Let's get into it. Okay, Alex, let's start with the basics. Why do your questions matter so much?
Because interviews are supposed to be a two-way conversation. You're not just being evaluated, you're also evaluating them.
But a lot of people treat it like a one-way interrogation.
Right. They go in thinking, I hope they like me, instead of, is this the right place for me? And that attitude shows.
So, what does it signal when you ask good questions?
Several things. First, it shows you've done your homework. If you ask about something specific to the company, it proves you didn't just mass apply to 100 jobs.
What else?
It shows critical thinking. The ability to ask insightful questions is a valuable skill in any job. If you can't think of anything to ask, that's concerning.
I've heard interviewers say they learn more about a candidate from their questions than from their answers.
Absolutely. Your questions reveal what you care about, how you prioritize, and how you approach problems.
Give me an example.
If someone asks, what's the vacation policy in the first interview, that tells me they're more focused on time off than on the work itself. But if they ask, what are the biggest challenges facing the team right now, that shows they're already thinking about how to contribute.
So the content of your questions matters, but so does the timing.
Yes, we'll get to timing in a minute, but first, let's talk about what happens when people don't ask questions.
The dreaded, no, I don't have any questions.
That's the worst possible answer. It makes you seem disengaged, unprepared, or like you're just desperate for any job.
Even if the interviewer has genuinely answered everything?
Even then, you can always dig deeper. You've answered most of my questions, but I'm curious about, there's always something more to explore.
What if someone is naturally shy or feels awkward asking questions?
That's why preparation is key. Write down your questions before the interview. Bring them with you on a notepad. It's perfectly acceptable to refer to your notes.
Really? You can read from a list?
Absolutely. In fact, it makes you look organized and thoughtful. Just don't read robotically. Use your notes as a guide, but maintain eye contact and engage naturally.
Okay, so we've established that asking questions is crucial. Now let's talk about what questions to actually ask.
Let's start with questions about the role itself. These are usually safe for any stage of the interview process.
What's a good opening question?
Can you walk me through what a typical day or week looks like in this position? This helps you understand the day-to-day reality beyond the job description.
That's practical. What else?
What would you expect someone in this role to accomplish in the first 30, 60, and 90 days? This shows you're already thinking about hitting the ground running.
I like that. It's forward thinking.
Here's another one. What does success look like in this role after 6 months? After a year? This tells you how they'll measure your performance.
That's smart, because then you know exactly what they're expecting.
Right. And if their answer is vague or they haven't thought about it, that's actually a red flag about the organization.
What about asking who you'd be working with?
Great question. Can you tell me about the team I'd be working with? How is it structured? Or who would I be collaborating with most closely?
This helps you understand if you'd be isolated or part of a collaborative environment.
Exactly. You can also ask, what happened to the last person in this role? Or why is this position open?
Ooh, is that too direct?
Not at all. If they say, she was promoted, that's great. It shows upward mobility. If they say, we're expanding the team, that shows growth. If they get uncomfortable or vague, that might be a warning sign.
What if it's a new position?
Then ask, what prompted the company to create this role? What problem are you trying to solve? This helps you understand the context and importance of the position.
What about asking about challenges? Is that appropriate?
Definitely. What are the biggest challenges someone in this role would face? Or what's the hardest part about this job? These show you're realistic and ready to tackle difficulties.
Does it make you seem negative to focus on challenges?
Not at all. It makes you seem mature and thoughtful. Only unrealistic candidates think a job will be easy and perfect.
Can you ask about training or onboarding?
Yes. What does the onboarding process look like? Or what kind of training and support would I receive in the first few months? This is especially important for career changers or people entering new industries.
What about asking how the role might evolve?
Great question. How do you see this role evolving over the next year or two? This shows you're thinking long-term and about growth.
Are there bad questions to ask about the role?
Yes. Don't ask things that are clearly explained in the job description. That shows you didn't read it carefully.
What else?
Don't ask, "What does this company do?" That's insulting. You should know that before the interview.
Let's move to questions about team dynamics and company culture. These feel more personal.
They are, but they're equally important. You might be great at the job, but miserable in the culture.
So, what can you ask?
Start with, how would you describe the team culture? Or, what's the working style of the team? This is open-ended and lets them paint a picture.
What are you listening for in their answer?
Whether it aligns with how you like to work. If they say, we're very independent, everyone works autonomously, and you thrive on collaboration, that's a mismatch.
What about asking about the manager directly?
If you're not interviewing with your potential manager, you can ask, can you tell me about the management style of the person I'd be reporting to?
And if you are interviewing with your future manager?
You can ask them directly. How would you describe your management style? Or what do you expect from your team members? Most managers appreciate the directness.
That takes some confidence.
It does, but it's your career. You need to know if this is someone you can work with effectively.
What about asking current employees about their experience?
If you're doing a panel interview or meeting multiple people, ask, what do you enjoy most about working here? This is a softball question that usually gets honest, positive answers.
And the follow-up?
What's been most challenging or surprising about working here? This often reveals more truth than the first question.
That's clever. What about work-life balance? Can you ask about that?
Yes, but frame it carefully. Don't ask, do I have to work long hours? That sounds lazy. Instead, ask, can you tell me about the typical work schedule and expectations around availability?
What's the difference?
One sounds like you're trying to avoid work. The other sounds like you're trying to understand norms so you can plan accordingly.
Can you ask about remote work or flexibility?
Absolutely. What's the company's policy on remote work and flexible schedules is a fair question.
What about asking about diversity and inclusion?
That's become more common and acceptable. You could ask, can you tell me about the company's approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Or what initiatives does the company have around creating an inclusive workplace?
How they answer probably tells you a lot.
Exactly. If they have concrete examples and specific programs, that's genuine commitment. If they give vague platitudes, it might just be lip service.
What about asking about turnover or retention?
You can, but word it carefully. Instead of asking, why do people leave, ask, what's your team's retention rate? Or what makes people stay long term?
That's more positive framing.
Right. You're asking the same thing, but in a way that doesn't sound accusatory.
Can you ask about conflict or how disagreements are handled?
Yes. How does the team typically handle disagreements or different perspectives? This shows emotional intelligence.
That's a mature question.
Now let's talk about questions related to career growth, which are especially important if you're looking for a long-term position.
Where do you start?
What opportunities are there for professional development and learning? This shows ambition without seeming like you're already looking to leave.
What about asking about advancement specifically?
You can ask, what does the typical career path look like for someone in this role? Or how have others who started in this position progressed within the company?
That's asking about promotion without saying, when will I get promoted?
Exactly. You're gathering data, not making demands.
What about asking about mentorship?
Great question. Is there a mentorship program? Or how does the company support employee growth and skill development?
Can you ask about specific skills you want to develop?
Absolutely. I'm interested in developing my leadership skills. Are there opportunities to lead projects or mentor junior team members? This shows self-awareness and initiative.
What about asking about performance reviews?
Good question. How often are performance reviews conducted, and what does that process look like? This shows you're open to feedback and focused on improvement.
Can you ask if the company promotes from within?
Yes. Does the company typically promote from within, or are senior positions usually filled externally? The answer tells you a lot about your growth potential there.
What if they say they usually hire externally for senior roles?
That's valuable information. It might mean limited upward mobility, which could be fine if you're looking for stability rather than climbing the ladder.
What about asking about conference attendance or continuing education?
Perfect question. Does the company support attendance at industry conferences or continuing education? This shows you're committed to staying current in your field.
Can you ask about lateral moves or cross-functional opportunities?
Sure. Are there opportunities to work on cross-functional projects or move between departments? This shows you're curious and want to understand the broader business.
Is there a danger of seeming too focused on advancement?
There can be. Balance is key. Ask 1 or 2 growth questions, but don't make the entire conversation about when you'll be promoted. Focus most on doing the current job well.
Now, let's talk about questions you should never ask, at least not in early interviews.
I'm guessing salary and benefits are on this list?
In the first interview, yes. Save compensation questions for when they make an offer or bring it up first.
Why?
Because in early interviews, they're still deciding if they want you. Leading with "what's the salary" makes you seem only interested in money, not the work.
When is it appropriate to ask about compensation?
Second or third interview, or when they ask about your expectations. Or if they bring it up, then it's fair game.
What other questions should you avoid?
Don't ask, "What does this company do?" You should already know. Don't ask anything easily found on their website. It makes you look lazy.
What else?
Don't ask, "Did I get the job?" at the end of the interview. Instead, ask, "What are the next steps in the process?"
That's more professional?
Much more. It shows patience and respect for their process.
Can you ask, when will I hear back?
Yes, that's perfectly appropriate. What's the timeline for making a decision? Or when should I expect to hear from you?
What about asking if there are any concerns about your candidacy?
That's bold, but can be effective. Based on our conversation, are there any concerns about my qualifications that I can address? This gives you a chance to overcome objections.
Does that work?
Sometimes, if they have concerns, you can address them. If they say no concerns, that's a positive signal.
What about asking for feedback if you don't get the job?
You can ask after you get the rejection, but many companies won't give detailed feedback due to legal concerns.
So, what's a good final question to ask at the end of the interview?
Is there anything else I can provide or clarify that would be helpful in your decision-making process? This shows you're thorough and gives them an opening if they need more information.
And then you thank them for their time?
Yes. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm very excited about this opportunity, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Should you reiterate your interest?
Briefly, yes. I want to emphasize that I'm very interested in this role and believe I'd be a strong fit for the team.
Without being desperate.
Right. Confident and enthusiastic, not desperate and needy.
Let's recap the key points about asking good questions in interviews.
Your questions are as important as your answers. They reveal your priorities, your preparation, and your critical thinking skills.
Always prepare questions in advance. Bring them written down. Never say, "I don't have any questions."
Ask about the role, daily responsibilities, success metrics, challenges, and team structure.
Ask about culture and team dynamics. How do people work together? What's the management style? How does the company support work-life balance?
Ask about growth and development. What learning opportunities exist? How do people advance? Is there mentorship?
Ask strategic questions about the company. What are their priorities? How do they differentiate from competitors? What challenges and opportunities are ahead?
Avoid asking about salary and benefits in early interviews. Don't ask questions easily answered by their website. And always ask about next steps.
Next episode, we're covering phone and video interviews, the unique challenges and strategies for succeeding when you're not face-to-face.
We'll talk about technology setup, how to build rapport remotely, and common mistakes people make in virtual interviews.
Until then, this is Jenny.
And Alex from English at Work. Write down your questions and practice asking them naturally. We'll see you next time.